Okay, today's lesson is 3.3. This will cover negative exponents, two things that I know you love, so we're combining them to form one thing that you are really going to love. This should be page number 26 in your notebook. And the goal for today is to rewrite and evaluate expressions with negative exponents. So let's talk about what a negative exponent is before we get into some examples. And so, since a negative is the opposite of a positive, the definition for a negative exponent is going to be the opposite of the definition for a exponent. So a negative exponent tells you how many times the base is being divided. So the definition of a positive exponent was how many times the base is being multiplied. So the definition of a negative exponent is telling you how many times it's being divided. Here's an example of what that looks like. And if we took negative 8 to the second power, 8 to the negative second power, it would be like taking 1 and dividing it by 8 2 times. And you would get some decimal that's really small, because when you're dividing 1 by any number, you're getting a decimal, obviously a fraction. That would be once, and then divided again would be twice. So there's no real simple way of figuring out what the answer is. We're going to go ahead and write it here for you. 0.0, and I can't even remember, 15625. 15625. Right? So that's quite the opposite of what we're used to. And because it's the opposite of what we're used to, and because division gets a little bit more dicey, the best way to tackle negative exponents is to convert to positive. So I want you to ingrain this in your minds at the moment. When you see a negative, your negative exponent, your mind should say, turn it to a positive because I know how to multiply and I'd rather multiply than divide. So convert negatives negative expose to positive. And that's what we're going to do in all of these examples. So let's go ahead and talk about how you do that. So we have example number 1, and there's really only one step. It's the step of converting the negative to a positive exponent. And then obviously after you do that, you just evaluate like you've done in previous lessons. So how do you convert a negative exponent to a positive exponent? Very easy. What you're going to do is you're going to flip, and I should say only the base. So you're going to flip only the base over the fraction line, and in doing so, you've converted the negative exponent to a positive exponent. So if you look here, the base right now is 4. And right now, as it stands, it's in the numerator because we can make this a fraction by putting a 1 under it, and that's what we're going to have to do. And we're going to take the base, which is 4, and we obviously include the exponent, and we're going to flip it over the fraction line. So since it's in the numerator, flipping it would mean putting it in the denominator. So now that it's in the denominator, the exponent is a positive. That's how you take it from a negative to a positive. You flip it over the fraction line. Because it was in the numerator, flipping it means putting it in the denominator. So what is left in the numerator? A 1. Now I don't want you to think that you're flipping the fraction, because you're not flipping the fraction. You're not taking this 1 and putting it up here and taking this and putting it down here. It just happens to be that for now, the number that is left once you take the 4 out is a 1. Now if I put this in Schoology, because you're going to have to write these as positive exponents, what that looks like is 1 divided by 4 to the positive second power, so positive 2. Now for the evaluating, well, we know how to evaluate these. We know that it's going to be 1 divided by 4 squared is 16, so that would be our answer after we evaluated. Flip only the base over the fraction line. That's how you convert it to a positive. Let's go ahead and go into example number 2. So here we have our negative exponent, our base, I hate that freaking button. I mean, I strongly dislike that button. Our base is a positive 5. Right now it is in the denominator with a negative exponent. Convert it to a positive, we gotta flip it to the numerator. What we get is a positive 5 over 3. We don't need to write it over 1 because you don't need to write things over 1 if you don't have to, right? So how would you put this into Schoology? You would just say 5 to the third power. And evaluating this, we're just going to take 5 to the third power, clear this out, 5 to the third power equals 125. So that would be our answer for this one. So if it was in the denominator originally with the negative, converting it by flipping it to the numerator is how you turn it to a positive. Okay, so now I'm just going to throw a ton of negatives at you to test your knowledge of whether negatives are not included in the base, included in the base, something that is very easy to get mixed up. So essentially, the answer to all of your questions is PEMDAS. And what PEMDAS is telling us is that we've got to do our exponent first. And right now, our exponent is a negative 3 to the negative 4th. However, it's a negative 3 that's taken to the power of 4, right? So this negative is included in the exponent part of order of operations. And then this negative out here, which is not in parentheses, is included after we take or figure out what the exponent is. We're going to multiply by this negative. So that's essentially the difference between the two negatives right now. Our base is negative 3. And we've got to flip it. So we're going to put it over 1 just for those visual learners. And I'm going to drop down here. If I flip it, I'm going to take the base. So I'm leaving that exponent that's on the outside because it's not part of the base. And I'm going to put the base down here. So we've got that negative that's left over. This one right here. We're going to put a 1 there because there's not, we've got to put something there. And now we've got our base and a positive exponent. So here we have our new expression written with a positive exponent. In Schoology, what this would look like would be negative 1 divided by parentheses negative 3 parentheses 4, and we can't do that, so we say caret 4, caret 4. Now we can go ahead and evaluate this. So this negative is just going to stay negative. Negative 3 to the 4th power. I'm going to use parentheses as I put the negative in because it's being taken with the number to the 4th power. So our final answer is a negative 1 over 81. That's how we would type it in. 2 more examples filled with lots of negatives. So here again we have negative 1 divided by negative 6 to the negative 3rd power. Let's go ahead and take the base. Right now the base is a negative 6 because the negative is inside the parentheses. And we need to convert it to a positive, so we're going to flip the base into the numerator. What we get when we do that is this negative is right there. All the base goes with it, so negative 6 to a positive 3 now, and we don't need to write it over 1. So notice how I did not move this negative that was in the numerator to the denominator, because I'm not flipping the fraction, just flipping the position of the base. Now we can go ahead and do order of operations, so we're going to take negative 6 to the 3rd power first, and then we'll multiply by that negative afterwards. So we've got that negative, and we've got to take negative 6 to the 3rd power. And we get a negative 216. And now we've got a double negative here. So our final answer, after we multiply that negative, is a positive 216. Whoops. Last example today. And it's an example that you'll see as you go through the problem set. This is what it looks like. It doesn't look like the ones that we have in the video because just you can't get that type of fraction line. So for those who are visual learners and you don't like seeing things horizontal, you can go ahead and convert this to a vertical expression very easily. What's in the numerator? Negative 1. What's in the denominator is a negative 4 to the negative 2 power. So we can convert it so that it's a little easier to unpack. What's our base here? Well, our base is a negative 4 because the negative is inside the parentheses. So I'm going to take the base, move it to the numerator. That negative stays right there. We move to base, which was negative 4. Exponent becomes positive. We don't need to write over 1. Counterproductive. Now we can go ahead and simplify. Oh, we've got to write this in Schoology. So what does this look like in Schoology? Negative 4 to the second power. There's my Schoology answer. Now, evaluating this, a lot of lines. Oh, a lot of lines. Lines everywhere. Evaluating negative 4 times a negative to the second power. Very easy. We're going to take negative 4 to the second power and then multiply by negative after that. So, negative 4 to the second power is a positive 16 times this negative makes it a negative 16. That is our answer. Good luck on the homework.